Hi, it's Dalia Cajigas with Remax. Today we're going to go over homebuyer strategies when submitting an offer. So I have 12 strategies here, and I'm going to go over them with you and show you a few of these documents. The first one is to get conditionally approved. So when you get pre-approved by your lender, you have submitted documents. But when you're conditionally approved, that shows that underwriting has reviewed the documents, verified employment, and now you're much closer to closing on the purchase. And this is very favorable to the sellers, right? Because they know that you're serious. Number two, offer more than the list price. Of course, that all depends on your pre-approved amount, but I, as your realtor, will do the market analysis report, give you a price range to show you what the property may appraise at, which is very important. And then you decide how much you want to offer. And that could be below list price, at market list price, or you can offer more depending on your motivation, right? Number three, we want to increase earnest money. Again, this is if there are multiple offers, which by the time we're submitting this offer, we may know if there are multiple offers. Keep in mind that the listing agent doesn't have to tell us if there are multiple offers. They could stay quiet. That's at the discretion of the seller. And we may assume that we're the only ones offering, but it's always possible that there are multiple offers, especially in this market, spring market. So keep that in mind that you should put your best offer up front in this market. So we are going to go back and take a look at increase earnest money. On page 1 of the multi-board 7.0 contract, we will put the offer price. We're going to ask for closing cost credit if that is something you want to do. And the bottom section shows earnest money. Earnest money is a good faith deposit that you are submitting to hold the contract, and the seller will see that as part of the contract. It's important to put whatever you feel comfortable with, but you may want to add more earnest money. You could start with maybe 1,000 or 5,000 and then go up a little bit more after attorney review and inspection period. So keep that in mind that this is a very important part of the negotiations with the offer. Number 4, be flexible with the closing date. Page 2 shows the closing date. That's the date that we want to close the deal and you receive your keys for the property, assuming the seller is handing keys over at closing. We will know that ahead of time, right? Closing date, you should be flexible with. Maybe we can close very quickly depending on your loan and the lender's ability, or maybe the seller needs more time. So I will try to get as much information about that so that we can hopefully be flexible with the closing date, maybe do 30 days from the offer date or 60 days from the offer date. That may be something that can help with the offer. Increase the down payment amount. Number 5, if you're financing the purchase, this section on page 2 shows what type of loan you're obtaining, conventional, VA, FHA, and the loan to value ratio. So if your loan is 80% of the purchase price, that is your loan to value ratio, right? That means you're putting 20% down. The more you can put down, the better the seller will see that you have more buying power, right? So keep that in mind that putting more down payment could help you with bumping up your offer. Number 6, purchase as is and waive your property inspection. This is an option. Not many people want to waive their property inspection, and I understand that. That's page 4 of this contract. If you decided that you are not going to do inspection, you're going to purchase the property as is without inspection, this section is what you would sign or initial. Keep in mind that is an option. It's, if you do purchase the home and waive your inspection, after closing, if there are major issues with the home, they could have been caught by the inspector. Maybe, maybe not, right? They can't see behind walls. So this is an option for you as a buyer. Number 7, purchase the property as is. With that section, you could still purchase it as is, but you can still perform your property inspection. That is on section coming up. That is on page 12, top of page 12, as is condition. So if you decided you're going to buy the property as is, this is where you would initial. That doesn't mean that the property's in bad shape, but many sellers are deciding to sell as is, especially in this market where sellers have the upper hand. I do suggest to my clients to purchase as is if that is something they're thinking about. But I do tell them that they can still do their inspection if they do that as is purchase. Number 8, arrange a rent back agreement for a short time. That's page 11, section 35, possession after closing. Many times sellers do want to stay after closing, maybe just a few days, a couple of weeks, a month, maybe longer. You as the buyer, if you're flexible, you can give them that option. That's still a rent back. The seller will pay you rent for that time frame. Your attorney will put that in writing, and that will be part of the attorney modification period to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Okay? I recommend that if you have the flexible time as the buyer. Number 9, pay cash for the purchase if you have the funds, or equity in another home. So sometimes buyers have a property with plenty of equity. They can take that money out, purchase a home cash, then they'll sell the first home and pay down that mortgage or pay it off. That is an option. Okay. If, the buyer has that, the funds available or the equity. Number 10, add an escalation addendum. What is an escalation addendum? Well, that's an additional form that you as the buyer can include with your offer. That means that when you are submitting an offer, if you want to stay at a certain price on the contract, example 400,000, but you're willing to go up higher, maybe 430, then you have the option of using this document. You still are offering 400,000, but if a competing offer, an additional offer comes in higher than your 400, you have the option of going a little bit higher than the 400. In this example, you add an escalation, right? So you could say, my offer is 400, I'll go up to 430. If there's a competing offer over 400, then, we'll go $2,000 or $5,000 over the competing offer. So an example would be the competing offer is 420. You said you'll go $2,000 over the 420, the competing offer. That means that if the seller agrees to take your offer, then you're purchasing it at 422. Not the 430, just $2,000 over the competing offer. And keep in mind that this escalation clause, it may not be accepted by the seller. Some sellers don't want price escalation clauses with the offers. So the seller doesn't have to accept this offer with this escalation. It's at their discretion. It's their property. They have that option. So keep that in mind. And number 11, add an appraisal addendum. So an appraisal addendum, basically when you're submitting an offer and the offer is accepted, you have to keep in mind that we still want that property to appraise at the purchase price. So at the example of $400,000 offer, we are, hoping that the property does appraise. You pay for that appraisal through your lender. Then an appraiser comes to the property. They will evaluate, they'll prepare an appraisal report, submit it to the lender. If there are issues with the home, repairs or anything like that, they may bring that up in the report. But also, we care about what the value is, what that appraised amount is. In this example here, Section 3 of the appraisal addendum has 3 options. In the event the appraised value is less than the purchase price, choose A, B, or C. If you choose A, buyer shall proceed to close the transaction and agrees to pay the differential amount at closing. Okay? So whatever the difference is, you as the buyer would bring in the difference plus your down payment plus your closing cost. You could also include the option, the appraised value must not be less than. So you could say, I don't want it to be less than 390. So if the offer is 400 and it appraises at 380, you said, I will only bring in the difference if it goes to 390. Then at that point, the seller will look at that and say, okay, they're bringing in $10,000 difference. I will maybe have to eat that $10,000, or the seller can put it back on the market. There are things that can happen that we do not have control over. We're just going to do the best we can to put your offer and get it accepted, and then we'll work from there, right? 3B, buyer shall proceed to close the transaction and agrees to pay the differential amount at closing, but in no event shall buyer be required to pay a differential amount in excess of. In B, you're going to put in amount instead of the price in section 3A, where the option is. You're going to put in 3B, you're going to put in amount. So you could say, well, I don't want to bring in more than $3,000. That's where you would put the 3,000 or 5,000, whatever amount you decide. And then 3C just says that the buyer shall have the right to terminate the transaction. So I will go over that with you if you decide you want to submit the appraisal addendum, but I just want to give you an idea of what that means. And then the 12th option or strategy is offer to pay the seller's closing costs to a specific amount. So you could say, hey, I have the extra $3,000 to $5,000. I want to offer to pay the seller's closing costs up to this amount. And if you do that, the seller you'd probably be unique in your offer. And the seller may say, hey, this sounds good to me. So keep that in mind. 12 options that I have for you to consider. I'm happy to go over all those details with you in more, break it down for you a little bit more. I'm always available to assist you with any questions that you have. And I look forward to talking with you once you've watched the video. Thanks.